Thank you very much. I don't want the monologue. Honorable Mente, I hope you are ready because I'm starting with you today. And can I also please ask members, we had a discussion here during our stretch session that we want to ask penetrating questions and give members enough time. So can we ask more questions and make less statements, if that's okay?
Thank you very much, Chair. Now, Chairperson, I don't have much because one thing we are only looking for is implementation of what the SIU has recommended. And we only need cooperation between the presidency and what they have proclaimed and signed off. So once the proclamation is investigated, we shouldn't have issues except if there are grounds of inconsistencies, which I find them not to be a holding ground per se, because during the process of investigation, I'm sure there are feedbacks that you exchanged amongst yourselves and paving a way forward as to are we still on track or not. Now, where SIU has given you recommendations and finalized any investigation, we are only expecting that there should be implementation and a tracker. A tracker is for the issues that we have. One, we have a biggest problem in South Africa where officials, when the SIU is investigating, some officials resign. They flag them and they report. But we don't see the presidency acting on those officials. Besides the fact that we will proceed with criminal cases and DCs and everything. And the DCs to these officials, they most of the time very lenient. And the very same officials then pop up in either at municipality or entities. But the cycle doesn't change. They still produce the same result because their incompetence will not be changed by the change of environment. It's either the presidency recommends training, a very strong training for officials, or we remove people, in particular those that are implicated with malfeasance, the maladministration and the corruption thereof. Now, I want to understand one, where there is vetting, the chair has been asking this question, where vetting is outstanding and where we find that there are people who have been employed in these areas of government, and we have been asking for vetting of these officials. What keeps it on hold for so much? I think we all have already the example of what happened at ESCOM when that guy left, then wrote a book, and then after we all realized that the guy was never vetted and he refused. What do we do when a person is refusing to be vetted? Why are we not removing them instantly? Why do we keep them until they are gone? The second thing is the officials that have been recommended to be removed. Why are they getting opportunities to be employed elsewhere without being removed? And this is because there is non-implementation. But the last one is, how do you monitor if the departments are implementing all the investigating and that are finalized by SIU due to proclamations signed by your office? Thank you.
We're waiting for the direction of the chair. Thank you, Chairperson. No, I think most of the questions have been asked. I just need a few clarities, because if you look at the number of referrals to the presidency for disciplinary hearings, which is 1,278, and then you look at the number of dismissals, which only sits at 44. I just want to check now, why do we have such a low number of dismissals? What are the outcomes of the other investigations? And then if a majority of the people are exonerated when they are referred to disciplinary hearings, then doesn't that reflect a flaw in the SIU's investigative capacities? And also wanted to check the issue of the mandate of the SIU and its investigative powers. There was an issue that was once raised when the SIU visited the committee, where some of the cases have to be referred back to the Hawks, which you feel like that is doing double work, because the Act empowers the SIU to do investigations and make referrals straight to the SIU. Just want to check if that has been resolved. And then in terms of the resignations before disciplinary committees, what is the way forward? Because in our joint visits to the Free State and the Northwest, you would find that it's the same group of people, chief financial officers, municipal managers, that mess up local government municipalities, resign, and then they get picked up in another municipality. It's like a syndicate of rogue officials who are just taking advantage of loops within the system. So what are we going to do to address that, given that these people are the same people that are collapsing local governance? And then on the central database, I don't understand why it is taking so much time, or there is no communication between the silo mentality still persists, where there is no communication between the line departments and the central database, where it can be, you are saying that some of the action plans is that it will be automated so that it reflects. So can that be done in a very urgent manner? And then references, it also baffles my mind why the state would struggle to get information. If I'm being vetted, if I do not want to give my bank statements, the state is empowered to go to the banking institutions and say, can we be given information of this person? The Financial Intelligence Center has the information. Why isn't the state going to that, using those resources? And then that how can, especially if a person is going to be employed by the state, they refuse to be vetted, and those people still end up being employed. So what's the point of having vetting as a requirement if you are going to employ someone who just refuses to be vetted? And then also when you are giving us a breakdown of the disciplinary hearings, can you just give me a brief explanation of the words that you say administrative? So when you say administrative, what kind of transgressions are those? When you say it's systemic, what kind of transgressions are those, and the prevalence of those transgressions? Thank you.
Yeah, we'll take answers after you, Honorable Atkinson.
Yeah, Chair, I think you assume that Honorable Mente will take a very long time until you come back. Unfortunately, today she was short and she finished before you come back. And the meeting was on autopilot. There was no chairperson.
No, I have had 35 missed calls from the same number. So, like when you've got kids and things, you start worrying. So I go back, it's a delivery.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks very much to the Presidency for the presentation. If I could just ask one question, I think it's got quite important legal ramifications here. If, in accordance with the presidential declaration in 2014, that there are certain positions that actually need a security clearance, and a reasonable period of time has gone by, and the person still hasn't got a security clearance, could you not then say that legally that person actually hasn't been appointed? And I think it's quite an important factor here, because if we ever get to a situation where that particular senior official's decisions are brought before court, a court could say, actually, well, you were never really appointed because you never fulfilled the criteria of, well, you never fulfilled one of the main requirements of your appointment, which is to come up with your security vetting. Because certainly in the private sector, as Honourable ZB pointed out, that's done beforehand, and that would be, it would result in you not being appointed if you actually don't get the security vetting. So I'm just questioning the legal liability here and the possibility that actions of that particular individual could be overturned. And then the second thing is this issue again of people resigning when they've been doing bad stuff, when they've been faced with a disciplinary. We've had a particular issue here with the Road Accident Fund where the acting CIO had been an employee in the city of Johannesburg, had placed money with the Gupta-linked organisation Regiment's Capital. When he was finally told to withdraw it because there wasn't proper approval for it, the city of Joburg made a loss in the tens of millions of rand because of that. And he faced a disciplinary inquiry and then obviously promptly resigned, and then popped up again at the Road Accident Fund and said no, that he hadn't done wrong. And obviously we checked with Joburg, and the story that he was telling us and the story that Joburg had was basically at odds. So I know that the public service are looking at a situation whereby they can red flag people who either have been fired, or certainly in these instances where there almost needs to be an amber light. There needs to be a warning light on people like this, because there's too much of this going on. I mean, we went on municipalities in Northwest and Free State in the last 2 months. And it's like a disease. Just about every municipality, people jumping around, they're doing bad things here, they move on elsewhere, whatever. It's a problem, and that's leading to the dysfunction of local government in South Africa. So my concern is that this is something that the Public Service Commission, that the minister, I think, said a year ago they're going to do. There's been no progress on it. Nothing's happened. And I do think that if we are going to run an honourable and honest public service, this is something that actually has to be put into place. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Before I hand over to the colleagues here, we want to repeat the fact that we've said that there's a need for a digital coordination, and that is what is currently ensuing, and monitoring a mechanism to ensure that the reports and process and recommendations are implemented. And this is done in collaboration with the Presidency, the SIU, CETA, and to some extent NPA. We want to repeat also the fact that once a matter has been referred for prosecution, we do not, the Presidency does not operate in that value chain, because we want to retain the independence of our criminal justice system. The other point is that once, and I agree with Honourable Mente, that some officials resign to evade accountability. And there are also instances where those officials are not pursued because they are no longer part of the system. I'm going to request that the colleagues delve into details on how we respond to that and how we've been able to respond to that. You would understand that the Presidency can only discipline its members fingered in the investigations. And because the reports are socialized with various government departments, the expectation is that these government departments must ensure that there's enforcement of discipline. However, what the committee wants to know, Jonathan and yourself, Rory, is what do we do in instances where there's an action? And I think that's what we must respond to. Jonathan, and then you'll conclude.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the questions. Some of the questions I'm not going to be able to answer, particularly around the sanctions available should a person refuse vetting, and in that kind of space. So I'm not going to attempt those, but I can provide some answers to questions related to the matter of resignations and the efforts that are underway to address this. So the Central Register project, as you mentioned, has been announced and been to cabinet and is functional. So you can go onto the DPSA's website, and you can, if you have an ID number, you can put in the ID number into the website. And it will, if there's a match with that ID number to a match on the Central Register for a dismissal, it will give you which was the dismissing organ of state and what date that dismissal was done. The regulations to enforce are currently in development by the Minister of Public Service and Administration. They've gone out for public comment, and they are they're being developed. The regulations are being issued under the Public Administration Management Act, which gives the power to the Minister of Public Service and Administration to issue regulations for local government, which regarding disciplinary matters. So that's, one of the challenges is the constitutional separation of the spheres of government. But this act does empower the minister to issue these regulations. We've been very successful with public service departments. All of them use the PERSAL system, the personnel and salary system for the payroll system. But on that system, there's also fields that capture things like dismissal date, reasons for dismissal. There are also fields for resignation, pending disciplinary cases. So in all the provincial and national departments, we've got a pretty good handle on that. We've run various exercises as the working group around this, led by DPSA, to bring in additional data. So, for example, the Treasury issued a circular requesting all state-owned enterprises to submit the last 5 years of records of people that have been dismissed or resigned. So those have been incorporated. Local government has been more difficult because of its highly decentralized nature. You have to really get. We were able to identify that quite a small number of service providers were providing the payroll system. So we thought we may have a quick way to get all that data. But we were then directed back to engage with each of the councils of all the municipalities, which is an enormous task, falling to COGTA. So this is a work in progress that is functioning. DPSA has issued circulars to everyone, all departments, to use this as part of their employment process. So you would need to go as part of and this will be I assume will be in the regulations, that when you appoint someone to a public service or administration position, as part of the employment process, you would need to input in their ID number into that. If you received a match, you would have to include that as part of the interview process, because we must also remember that the dismissals have been weaponized against good officials by bad accounting officers. It's a powerful weapon. Put them on suspension, keep them. And so resignations, one cannot automatically assume that a person who is dismissed should never be employed, but they should certainly need to account for it in an interview. So that's the step. You would need to, as an employer, go to you get given the dismissing organization. You would need to go and satisfy yourself and record in your interview process the reasons why you decided to appoint, notwithstanding the fact that they appeared on this register. So we're trying to also build in some protection as well for potential employers. PERSAL has an automatic exclusion if you are dismissed. There's a time period, 5 years, 10 years, depending on what the reason was. So you can't be employed in any department, provincial or national, if you on that you've got a block on your against your ID number. So but it's the state-owned enterprises and the local governments that are more complicated, which we are working to bring in into this single system of accountability. In terms of the resignations, what's supposed to happen? The receiving department is required to receives. Say if someone is, we had a case in the Northwest where someone was deployed to the Premier's office, and it was necessary that the disciplinary case followed them. And we had a dismissal, in fact, in this recently, where an official was resigned and joined another department. They were dismissed at that department, or sanctioned. Sorry, I speak under correction. But that disciplinary hearing followed them. So that's what's supposed to happen. Again, it's if there is the kind of syndicate that the members are alluding to, where there's the circulation, then it's the resilience and robustness and dependency of the administrative systems to make this visible. And that's really the space that we our theory of change is if we manage to build those administrative systems across different spheres of government, different organs of state, different state-owned enterprises, through regulations, through enrollment, through creating the opportunities for them to join that system, the incentives, then we will win on that. It is an immensely complex task. I think a lot of folk outside of the state underestimate the size of the state, the complexity of the state, and the obstacles in the way of reforming administrative systems and building systems. In terms of the categories of sanction where there are finalized cases. So in the slide, we just pulled out the dismissals from the guilty. They've been, in terms of the outcome, if I can just give you the exact figures here, where we've had guilty findings of those total number, we are, sorry, I might need to come back to you on that, but we've had 43, if I go through this here, we've, one of the guilty verdicts, the contract was not renewed. One was sent for corrective counseling, that was the sanction. 2 were demoted. The 44 were dismissed. 43 received final written warnings. 2 received final written warnings with suspension without pay. 3, apologies. 8 received suspension without pay. And 30 received written warnings. So out of the finalized number, we had 138 that were found guilty. We had the 55 resignations, and we had declined to act. Accounting officers considering the information from SIU and declining to prosecute, to effect disciplinary processes, and we had people, deceased people, retiring, etc. So it's a large body. And I think we also need to remember that because you are recommended for a disciplinary process based on an SIU investigation, you must be assumed still to be innocent. It's just because your name appears on a list does not make you guilty. There is a need for due process, and so these whether the processes themselves were in sufficient integrity, those are the questions we need to keep asking. But it's not just 55. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question. Yeah, but we have.
Can we commit to providing granular details on the outcomes of those DCs for future purposes?
No, you can
elaborate as Jonathan has attempted. Chair. Thank you very much.
Now, I just want to, because the COO, indicated he wants to say something, so he might assist you and I out of our follow-up questions.
I hope so, Chairperson. And thank you so much, Chairperson. I think Jonathan has covered this matter of the officials who have been flagged and the arrangements that are being put in place, both administratively and through the rules, the legislation, for the database. So that's the one that I'm not going to address. I want to address three of the others, Chairperson, if I may. The first one, Chairperson, relates to the whole question of, and then what do we do in the event of non-cooperation? Now, Chair, I think what the committee, what the Department of the Presidency maybe needs to say firmly in the committee is that as far as the tools are concerned, the policies, the contracting, the rule book, the DPSA guidelines, but Chairperson, public sector recruitment is unlike recruitment outside of the public service. It is so regulated, it's a procurement process. If you pick up the advert, let's start with the advert, then let's go to the selection panel, then let's go to the appointment letter, then let's go to the contract. All of those stages in recruitment have the tools that we need. When the advert goes on the circular, the DPSA circular, if it's a position that needs security clearance, the advert itself says so. Then the candidate arrives in the interview. It's a prescribed format that when the interview ends, the DPSA prescribed format requires the secretariat in the interview to ask the candidates at the end of the interview whether they have any declaration of any outstanding disciplinary that the panel needs to know about. If the candidate decides not to be truthful, that is immediately grounds for that person to be removed when it becomes known to the employer that they've not been truthful and that they've not disclosed. Then, Chairperson, the candidate is successful, the candidate gets an appointment letter. The text in the appointment letter explicitly says that your appointment is subject to your vetting and if there's any other outstanding things that are needed. And it's in the appointment letter, so there's a fallback from a legal point of view. And then when you sign the contract, it's a clause in the contract. So the folly is sometimes the act of omission administratively can affirm an appointment because the tools aren't being used. So a resolve to apply our tools effectively in the execution protects the employer, protects the public service very, very well. They're all in place. If there are things that need to be closed, and there are things that need to be closed on the enforcement. So that's the first one I wanted to just point out to the committee, Chair. And then the other two that I wanted to just touch on was on the disciplinary. There are, but not many, accounting officer, head of an entity, head of a provincial department, a DG of a province or of a national department who isn't disappointed and frustrated many times at how long a single disciplinary hearing takes. And that disciplinary hearing requires a number of parties to be in the room to avoid a postponement. You need the presiding officer, you need the prosecuting officer, and you need the party who is facing the disciplinary. So often, a disciplinary hearing is dragged out because of postponements, because one of the three parties is not available because they're ill or they have a double booking with another disciplinary and so on. So one of the members asked the question about the length of time that it takes. My experience as an accounting officer is, and obviously sometimes it's tactical on the side of the accused, but sometimes we really struggle with an outside presiding officer or an outside prosecuting officer. Many of the departments are saying, therefore, the training of internal players for those disciplinaries needs to be improved so that we can move them quicker. In the department that I represent, we track it. All labor relations issues are on a spreadsheet, and we red flag it when it's taking too long. And we had a bigger problem earlier, just our department, and that's been rolled back. And then, Chairperson, the last matter, which I'm not going to go into depth on, because DPSA, as the Deputy Minister has said, must speak on the whole matter of vetting. We are conscious that there is a backlog to catch up on. It has been discussed at the highest level. It just requires a concerted collaboration between the players. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Honorable Mente, I'll come back to you. I just want to say, so my observation, Honorable Deputy Minister and your colleagues, is that when I listen to you, I feel like we don't have an executive presidency. There is a problem of people not fearing consequence from what the presidency wishes the government to do. Because all of these things that I'm hearing, they are solvable. There are other areas of the state that have solutions, regulators that have solutions for what you do. So please, for example, speak to the governor of the Reserve Bank. They have a register of every prescribed officer in the financial sector and the people that would act on their behalf. All of those people are vetted. I was one of those. The state already does this. Why we don't have an accounting officer register in South Africa is beyond me. There is nothing stopping us from having one. And I don't think if the president issued a directive to say this must be done, there will be somebody who says, I don't want. So my frustration is that you sound like contemporaries of the people you oversee. I'm not saying start swearing here in the meeting, but I'm also feeling frustrated because there are people who don't do this, there are people who don't do that, they don't do this on time and so on. If the rule was, if we can't find your references, we're not going to hire you. Phone that guy, and that guy needs to be available by Friday. If he or she is not available by Friday, you're out of a job. If I was looking for a job and Honorable Mente was not available, I'm phoning Honorable Mente and I'm telling you, will pick up that phone tomorrow morning when they call you. So for me, the fact that people don't cooperate with the process means they don't respect you. That's all it says to me. And I think that needs to change, please, because a lot of these are eminently solvable. So that's my comment. That's my frustration. People need to have a level of fear for the presidency, a healthy fear. And I don't feel it in your presentations today. I just don't. I don't want to monopolize the time. Honorable Mente, did you have a follow-up on your quickly, please? And then we'll go to Honorable Isaac.